Hey guys, welcome to the Kane Audio vlog. I'm Don Kane. It is Friday and it's time for another Ask Me Anything. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee and join me for another week. House admin before I start. What have I been doing this week? Do you know what? I can't believe it's Friday already. What have I been doing? Oh, yeah, I've been doing a remix for Mau5trap. It's scheduled for release next month in about 3-4 weeks time, I think. So I will, if you're a follower of my Facebook fan page, you'll have seen a tiny snippet video that I've done of my Moog behind me, of where I've got about 7 or 8 of them playing at the same time. But I haven't had the all clear from the original artist yet, so I'm sort of just teasing out a little bits here and there. So more on that soon. Other than that, I don't think I've been up to too much this week. No, can't think of anything else. Oh, no, yes I can. The other thing is, someone mentioned last week's video, I think, about setting up a Facebook group. I have done that now. If you head to my Facebook fan page, you will see in the top right a button that says visit group. The Facebook group has been set up there. Annoyingly, I set it up just after filming last week's video and thought, right, I'll just send an invite out to all my Facebook fan page followers, and it won't let me. I can click the button that says invite page followers and it pops up with an empty box, which is a bit annoying because clearly you guys are the ones that want the group and I can't even invite you. So hit visit group. At the moment there's only a few people joined, so please do get involved in the group. The group I want to be sort of an extension of this channel, I suppose, so it's really primarily for you guys watching this. You know, ask questions, ask me questions, ask each other questions, show some clips of stuff you're working on, maybe some little tips or tricks or techniques, or you know, ask people, well, whatever you want really. That's what the group's for. It's an open discussion for music production, engineering, sound design, you name it, whatever. And yeah, if you can invite your friends, if you've got producer friends or whatever, then please do that, because I can't for some reason. Yeah, I think that's about it for house admin, so straight on with the questions. I'm not sure I've even seen them this week, to be honest. It's just been a pretty busy week. Outsider. Hi Don, Lens, high five. Luckily cars aren't quite such a necessity here in London as everywhere else. Yet when I did live in or near London, I went without a car for quite a long time, because then I moved to Cardiff and again city centre, so I didn't really need a car. Anyway, I think you're onto a great idea with a Facebook group, and it seems most of the others think the same. It could be a good opportunity to build a form of small community. As for a question this week, I'm winding up in a situation sort of similar to yourself with my 2011 Mac. I definitely don't have the cash for any of the newer Apple products, so I've been thinking about building a desktop PC, and I'm wondering if you know the difference, if any, between Ryzen motherboards and processors as opposed to Intel, as that's what I'm being advised to go with. Obviously I have a whole lot to learn about before I dive head on into actually doing this. I don't know much about the Ryzen ones. I've heard of them, I've seen a few people talk about them, but personally I prefer to stick with known architecture until everything is resolved, because when there's a new chipset architecture, I kind of feel like, you know, the companies that make plugins and VSTs and whatever, you know, they're all sort of tried and tested on Intel chips, really. Let's be honest, that's pretty much all there is when it comes to these things, especially when it comes to Macs. So I don't tend to sort of venture out beyond that. So I think that is kind of me answering the question. That I think that would be my advice to others, is you've got to be careful when trying new things. If you have a machine that is for music production, you need to be aware that music production software companies are not the most advanced. They're not trailblazers in any way, shape or form. They're quite often back of the queue. I don't know why, there's no rhyme or reason for that, but you know, similarly, when macOS or Windows has a new update available, you know, you'll sometimes notice that with a major update, everybody sort of asks their Facebook friends, oh, does everything work on the latest OS now? You know, and because when it first gets announced, there's always something that goes horribly wrong, and if you do that update and then you can't roll back, then it can be really, really annoying and frustrating and costly. So personally, I don't tend to venture outside of stuff. So I'm actually half now, because of you guys, actually I'm half looking at Hackintosh stuff, because I have seen there's been a couple of breakthroughs in the software management, and providing you sort of stick to certain lists of you know, chipsets and GPUs, then they tend to be fairly stable. So I'm still kind of looking into that, wondering whether it's worthwhile or not. Which again, you know, it has to be an Intel chip, so I don't think I would consider Ryzen at this point until you've seen hundreds of other producers go, yeah, this is the bomb. Then, you know, personally I wouldn't risk it. So yeah, there's more to that. Oh no, it's not. That was read more. Deadmouse5, the Mexican Deadmouse. Thanks for this week's video, Dom. Lens, high five. Don't have any questions on my mind right now, but hey, maybe next week. Thanks for being awesome. Thank you for watching. Cavok, cheers, Dom. Another interesting AMA. Lens, high five. I think the Facebook group idea is excellent, could be very useful for those of us who follow your vlogs, but also have a much wider appeal, potentially bringing a bigger audience to your channel. More participants, better discussion, in theory. Yes, in theory. And it's a bit weird actually, because I mean, I'm very lucky that I don't have a huge following. You know, if you look at some of these superstar producers and whatever, you know, if they set up a Facebook group, it would first of all crash out. Second of all, it'd be a nightmare to manage. Third of all, for you guys joining that group, it would be a nightmare to be a part of, because you're going to have such a wide range of people in there that you, let's be honest, half of them will be idiots to the other half. So yeah, I'm, as much as I want this channel to grow, I want that growth to be pretty organic, and I love the fact that, you know, a lot of you guys are regular followers and regular questioners, because I think that helps build things up much more organically. So yeah, as much as I'd quite like the Facebook group to take off, I'm also quite wary that I wouldn't want it to take off too much. I have another Bitwig question for you. Have you mastered all the modulators yet? I'm making my way through them, but the Bitwig documentation isn't very comprehensive, and there aren't many tutorials out there that go into enough detail. I've played with most of them, but I find myself always going to classic LFO, because it does what I need it to do. I quite often use the envelope follower for things like reverb. It's quite nice to do a sort of create an aftertouch reverb with the dry wet mix on an envelope follower. So I do a few things like that. You'll notice some of my sort of key sounds have a bit of a weird reverb on them, and that's usually why. I didn't realise that the documentation wasn't particularly good, so maybe I'll look into doing a couple of videos and we'll have a look through them together, so that could be quite good. So yes, that's something I'll look into. Unknown artist. Hey Dom, back again. Welcome back. Missed last week's and have had withdrawal symptoms ever since. I've hit a bit of a low point on the music side of things, so aren't making much music currently. I think it's healthy to have time away from music. Would you agree? Yes, absolutely. I think it doesn't matter whether you're professional, semi-professional, amateur, hobbyist, whatever you class yourself. I think it's important for us all to have a break, and in fact I've quite publicly said before, I was producing relatively successfully for several years, and it got to a point around 2012, 13, something like that, and I ended up taking a couple of years out of it, really. I mean, I was still doing my sound design and still musically involved with projects, but as an artist, I stopped releasing Dom Kane stuff. You'll notice there's a big gap for a couple of years, and a lot of that was down to the rest of the industry. Just I got annoyed with what I was hearing. I just was feeling uninspired, and so yeah, so I ended up taking pretty much a couple of years off releasing stuff under my own name, while I focused on other projects, more the sound design stuff. And I think that was vitally important. That was critical to my whole career so far, really. In hindsight, being able to look back at it, at the time, you know, I was pretty miserable about it, but I feel now that's probably the best thing I ever did musically, because it allowed me to just remove my head from that part of the industry and just go, you know what, just forget that bit and I'll just focus on my sound design and having some fun, basically, and doing some new things. And that's what I did, and that actually kind of fell into me experimenting more and pushing a few more boundaries, and that's when I started figuring out what we now know to be the Dom Kane sound, I suppose. And that really just kind of came together by accident. It wasn't a purposeful thing. I didn't decide, oh, I'm going to go in this direction. Being the age I am, I was brought up on the deeper side of the house scene with progressive house in the 90s with Digweed and Sasha and people like that. So I just kind of fell into that more on a deeper level, while also experimenting with sound design and trying to sort of teach myself a bit more music theory for other projects, and it just kind of started falling into place, I suppose. So yeah, so I do recommend that everyone takes a break every now and then, and just takes a step back. You know, for me at that point, I unfollowed everyone in the industry, all the magazines, all the famous DJs, producers, you name it, unfollowed them all. Just didn't want to know. I was seeing the same shit over and over again on, you know, Twitter. All these sort of celebrity DJs, for want of a better word, were, you know, hey, awesome gig last night in Vegas and off to so-and-so, and here's a picture of me on a private jet with my logo stuck on the side. And I just felt like, right, that's great for you. I'm sure that's great for the fans to see, but as an artist, it wasn't doing anything for me, and I just sort of unfollowed everything and just thought, I'll do my own thing, and that's when it all fell together. Obviously, I'm not suggesting everyone should take a couple of years out, but I do think every now and then you should sort of just switch off to the rest of the industry. Forget about what other people are doing. You just do your thing and find out what your strength is and what your weakness is, and you know, and what you enjoy most. And I think you can really only do that by taking a bit of a break. So back to the question, if you're not making that much music, that's all good. You know, watch some tutorials, watch some vlogs, focus on some new stuff. You know, maybe if you write club music, listen to some film scores or listen to some game scores and study some other bits that maybe don't normally fit into your style of music, and branch out and just play with things and see where you end up. I think that's probably the best advice I could give in that situation. A lot of it comes down to inspiration, and I think actually we provide our own inspiration. You know I certainly do, when I'll be playing with a synth and I'll just come up with a sound, and then all of a sudden I go, oh, hang on, and I'll start writing out some chords or playing a melody or something that then gets my juices flowing, and I'm like, oh, okay, hang on, I'm onto something here, and it all kind of falls together. And you know, you can't force that to happen. It just has to happen naturally. So yeah, so I do think taking a break, it can be a very good thing. The only other thing I would say on the flip side of that, the only argument against it, is that I know if I take 2 weeks off, if I'm traveling or whatever, and I take 2 weeks off, whatever length of time I take off, it takes me about that again to get back into it. So if I take 2 weeks off, when I get back in here, it takes me probably another 2 weeks to then get back into the swing of things. So I think that's probably an important bit as well. Anyway, switching computer could be a real ball ache, but I wish you luck nonetheless. Yeah, Facebook group would be amazing. There we go, done, join it. I think I replied to that with, yeah, so I have replied to a couple of you guys mentioning the Facebook group, with a link to the Facebook group. So yeah. Andy Robinson, hey Dom, loving the channel, thank you very much. I've just got myself a Moog Sub 37. Do you always high pass the bass above the kick, and if so, where are you high passing up to? No, is the answer. This is always a tricky one to get across. I think when it comes to mixing kicks and bass, in fact, I probably go into this in more detail on this channel. I did a mixdown series. I think it was 3-parter. Look at part 1 of that. I start with the kicks and the bass. But in essence, if you're using, so a Moog Sub 37, for example, which we know is a big boomy bass, if you've got that big boomy bass, then you need to choose your kicks accordingly. You probably need to change your kicks. If you've got long extended boomy kicks, they're going to clash. So you need to get shorter, sharper, tighter kicks to cut through that bass. And then don't worry about the low end too much. Sometimes I might, it depends on what key I'm in, but sometimes I will high pass a bass line up to about 40, maybe 50 hertz at the most, but usually maybe 35, 40 hertz, around that area. Just because any speaker in the world, you know, the greatest speakers in the world will struggle to reproduce 35 hertz, and any lower is just a waste of time, you know, unless you've got this amazing multi-million-dollar sound system. Then there's just no point trying to do that. Let's be honest, the vast majority of us these days listen to music on computer speakers or an iPhone, you know, or a laptop or headphones or something, and none of those things are going to reproduce 35 hertz, let alone 30 or 25. So I'll quite often just scoop a bit out there just so that the speakers aren't even going to try. Other than that, I don't think I don't officially high pass the bass. I think it's more a case of finding that combination of first of all, what key you're in, so what the root note is, and find the frequency of that, and don't take it too low down. Secondly, a lot of it is dependent on the kicks. So like I say, if you've got really short, sharp, stabbing bass lines in, say, 16th notes or something, then you might want to sidechain it, and then you could use some sort of long extended kicks, and so long as it's sidechained, then they're not battling each other too much. Whereas if you have big, long, extended bass lines, which you probably will have with the Sub 37 because they're just so tasty, then you probably need shorter, sharper kicks with a much heavier transient and upper body, I suppose. So yeah, so it's all about getting that bass kick combo to work together, and they need to complement each other rather than fight each other. So that would be my advice. I can see St. Nicholas has responded, surely that would depend on the kick. Yeah, so that's kind of what I just said. Rod Marconi, thanks again, Dom. The idea of the Facebook group sounds good. Yeah, see below. St. Nicholas lens wipe. High five. And then the last one by the looks of it, Nathan Zaskarinskis. Hey Dom, lens, high five. I built a Euro rack, or Euro crack as it's known, and ended up in the void of random noise, which is exactly why it's Euro crack. So I've not had questions for you, but need your help, advice please. Okay, this is like an AA meeting now. I was curious how you go about making your drums. Is it VST, samples, analog gear? Yes, yes, and yes. I don't have one way of going about drums. I think I probably use samples more than anything else. But a lot of the reason for that is because I have my own sample packs that I've created drum sounds on, so I've spent a lot of time recording either analog gear or outboard gear, whatever, and creating those drums. And also quite often I might have a small kick and I'll drop some effects on it and sort of shape it and tweak it, and then I'll bounce that out as another sample, and then in another project later on I might want to bring that back in. So I would say it's probably mostly samples these days, but ones that have probably come from analog gear or digital gear, outboard gear. And VST wise, my kicks, 99.999% of the time I am using Sonic Academy's Kick 2 because it's awesome. I use Machine, but seem to be having a difficult time actually committing to a sound because there's so many possibilities. Yeah, I can feel that. So I was thinking of selling that to get something else, probably a drum brute or some Eurorack drum modules, but was curious as to how you go about it. So I'm always kind of scared of Eurocrack stuff. You know, I'm not sure if I've ever said it on this channel, but I know I've definitely said it in interviews where I kind of steer clear of modular synths, and have spent most of my adult life trying to keep away from it because I know, hence the term Eurocrack, it's addictive as shit. You know, it's once you pop, you can't stop, and you end up with, you buy a rack and it's an empty rack and you've got, say, 3 units in there, and then you're looking at that empty space going, oh, I need to fill that space, I need it to look good, and you know, you end up just buying units after units after units. And yeah, so I have said before, I've lost a lot of friends to Eurocrack, and you know, they buy the rack and maybe a couple of oscillators or a filter or something, and you know, and then you don't hear from them for a month. So good luck with that journey. So the other point I feel I should make about Eurorack stuff is, with the drum sounds, I guess it depends on what kind of music you're making, because a lot of modular synths sound like modular synths, and that can be great for arpeggiators or background pads or sweeping effects, things like that. But I kind of feel like for my sort of music, I think you need a good solid combination of solid structured sounds as well. And I feel like, okay, if you've got a couple of $100 worth of Eurorack stuff, you could do all of that and more, and that would be great. But if you're just starting out and you've got, say, 3, 4, 5 units, you'll probably struggle to get things sounding really thick and rich and full-bodied, and that can become a problem for some people. And I've noticed a lot of my friends who've ended up going down the modular route, their style of music changes quite drastically as well. It becomes a lot more experimental, which is fine, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not where I want to go at this point. So the drum brute, I would say, is probably a great choice. Yeah, otherwise, sample packs. There's nothing wrong with using sample packs, unless you want the hands-on experience, and in which case go down the modular route and make your own sample packs, you know, like I did. So yeah, so I don't know if that really answers your question. It's kind of a complex answer because it's a bit of everything is the answer. Also, I'm having to start doing live shows, but I'm not sure what the best way is to go about it. I was contemplating using Ableton to sort of DJ, as it would also give me the ability to include the Eurorack, but on the other hand I'm thinking of CDJs or Tractor, as they would be easier to sort of read the room and play what the crowd is reacting to. Any thoughts, advice? So I think you need to ask yourself a couple of questions here. I've mentioned before, I had a gig years ago in room 2 of Pasha in London. Now, anyone who's been to Pasha, London, will know that the main room is very much focused on the main event DJ, and if you are doing a live show in that sort of scenario, then people can kind of, you know, they're aware of what you're doing and whatever. And if I'm totally honest, I think the people who spend their time in the main room watching certain artists perform, you know, they're an intelligent crowd, and they're aware of what the artist is at least trying to do. On the flip side of that, when I was in room 2 in Pasha, I found it a bit soul destroying, because at that point in time I had 2 iPads, a MIDI keyboard, 2 MIDI controllers, NI machine, laptop, probably a couple of other bits. So it was a big setup covering, you know, at least a desk or 2. And it's only a small room, but of course, being room 2, the crowd in there were the kind of crowd who were just kind of walking around the whole club and seeing, oh, what's in that room, or what's in that room. It wasn't, you know, it's not a key focal point of the night. You're not a headline act if you're in room 2. Even if you're headlining room 2, you're not the reason people are buying tickets to that club generally. So what I found sort of halfway through my set was I just sort of took a look at the crowd and thought, you know what, as far as those guys out there dancing are concerned, I could be on Facebook, I could be checking my email. I didn't feel like I was with the crowd. I felt almost removed from the crowd, because I don't think they knew what I was doing. I don't think half the room knew who I was, so I don't think they were there to witness that experience. So I think I probably read that gig wrong, and I probably read the room wrong. I don't know, it's hard to tell, but that's how I feel in hindsight. And that kind of, I found that a bit disheartening really, because I kind of felt like, am I just wasting my time with all of this? Then I finished my set, and this young new DJ was following up after me, and he walked in with his headphones in a little carry bag and a USB stick, goes, plug that in, whoop, and off he goes. And I sort of looked at him while I was packing my suitcase of equipment, and I looked across and thought, yeah, I think I've misread this gig. That's what I should have done. So I guess you need to ask yourself, you know, if you're in a little bar or something and it's a Friday night crowd who are just there for the drinks, is it worth your while setting up all that equipment and doing something really creative, or are you just going to feel deflated because you kind of underselling yourself then, and you've kind of missed the situation? I can see my camera is almost at the 30-minute mark, so I'm just going to give it a quick refresh. So I think a lot of it comes down to, if you're, you know, like I say, if you're playing a Friday night crowd, and they're just in there for drinks and cheap drinks or whatever, then, you know, maybe that's not the best place to experiment, because they won't appreciate it and you might feel underappreciated, and that can be quite disheartening. Having said that, if you're in, let's say, an art gallery cafe or something where it's the more artistic crowd and they're there to witness something from an artistic standpoint, then you can totally go Eurorack and just go wild, you know, make it an enjoyable experience for yourself. However, then if maybe you're the feature act and the headline act of a major club, then you know you've got that platform to make it your own and make the show your own. So I think those are the questions you probably need to ask yourself at this point. Is where am I in this show? Am I the key feature, and do I have enough room to experiment in front of a crowd that might appreciate it? I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing the opposite in either direction. You know, there's nothing wrong with going to an art gallery and playing off CDJs and USB sticks. Vice versa, there's nothing wrong with going to a cheesy Friday night bar and experimenting and going wild. I just don't think you as an artist will feel quite right in your placement there. So without that information, I can't really answer you, but hopefully that's something to think about, I guess. My live set used to be, I mean, obviously I started on vinyl, moved to CDJs when they were first invented, and for a long time it was kind of half and half, because some releases would be out on vinyl and some would be on CD. Like if you were a member of certain promo pools, you'd get them on CD, and so it was kind of a mix, and then it eventually became CD only. And then after a while things like Ableton started coming out, so I had the first MacBook and a copy of Ableton, and you know, I'd sort of put my own tracks on there and whatever, and then it became kind of half CD, half Ableton, and then I transferred to Ableton because I wasn't trusting the sound delay on mixers and sound systems in various clubs around the world. Some of them were horrendous. And then it kind of eventually transitioned where I thought, actually, I've got more to play with on Ableton. So again, you know, I guess you can kind of mix it up. I think I started with like 3 channels in Ableton of set tracks, and I'd kind of color code them into what sort of, so I think I had like a bit of a traffic light thing going on. So like green would be, say, more of a chilled out vibe, maybe start of the night, and then it would move into amber, where it would start heating up, and then red was more into like the peak time set. So I could sort of mix between those, and then after that I think I added like another couple of channels of maybe VSTs where I'd write a few melody clips to go on top of other tracks and mix those in, and then I think I got a MIDI controller and started putting in some reverb and delays and bits and pieces, some sends, and yeah, and it all started building together quite slowly, but over time I ended up with a bunch of stuff that was kind of all over the place, really. So yeah, I think the options are all yours. The one thing I will say is, after that Pasha gig, I then decided, you know what, like, screw this, I'll go CDJs and just do USBs, and I kind of figured that I won't now do live show stuff, or semi-live, whatever you want to call it, until it's fully there. So in my view, what I do as a DJ now is I'll do USB CDJs, and I'm happy with that. I enjoy it, and although it's kind of playing it safe, I can read the crowd better. I can it's more versatile. So you know, if I sense that the crowd want to go into more techno-y stuff, then I can do that, because I've got, you know, a couple of 100 tracks available to me, and they're wide varying tracks. If the DJ before me plays really laid back down tempo, then I can start from there and work my way up. So it's a lot more versatile. Whereas with a live set, if you're playing from Ableton or Bitwig or whatever, I think you need to be the feature. You know, I'll use Stefan Bodzin as a great example. He, as a headliner, it doesn't matter. Nobody gives a flying monkeys what the DJ before him plays or the DJ after him. Nobody cares, because they've bought tickets to go to that club to see Stefan Bodzin, so he can do anything he wants from start to finish. So he will play Stefan Bodzin tracks through and through, and that gives him a great opportunity to go semi-live with his controllers and his Moog and whatever, because he's the feature there. so that's kind of where I'm at, is that I kind of told myself that I'll stick to USBs for now, and then maybe when I get to a point, again, I've mentioned before, my plan in the next year or two is to get an album together, and if I tour that album, then I hopefully will be in a position where I can tour that album as a live or semi-live performance. So that will be from Bitwig, and I will have either printed mastered stems or a mixture of printed stems with additional loop points and cue points of all of my tracks, so that they're sort of spread out into, say, 8 channels, and then I can run those 8 channels through various effects, and then have a MIDI controller, and then have something like my Sub 37 running for, because my Sub 37 is in pretty much every track I ever do, so I can have that sort of triggering or being triggered by MIDI in the live set, and then I can tweak the Moog as I go along. So that's kind of the semi-live thing that I have in my head. But I feel like I need an album's worth of stuff to do at least 2 live sets. You know, I want it, I guess I need to be able to have about 2, 3, 4 hours worth of music to be able to really do that comfortably and practice every single one inside and out, so that I can add more and more to it. However, if I was to do that show on a Friday night in a local bar to a crowd who aren't even there to see me, they're there to get smashed and have a good time, I think that would be kind of soul destroying for me, because I'd be stood there doing these things that I enjoy, but I know that every time I've got my head down, I'm looking at the synth and I'm going, oh, that was good, I know I'm going to look up and just see some guy vomiting in the corner or whatever, and I'm just going to be like, oh, well, that was completely pointless, you know. So yeah, so that was a long ramble of where I'm at when it comes to live shows and CDJs and whatever else. I think, you know, a lot of it is about the ability to read a crowd and make quick changes. If you're doing semi-live or live modular show stuff, then you're kind of cornering yourself, that you can really only do quite a restricted style, or, you know, you can't vary it up so much. So I think that's something to consider. And also it depends on what you're going to enjoy the most, I suppose, because let's be honest, you know, we do it for ourselves more than anyone else. So there we go, that is everything done, yes, for this week. Just to recap, the Facebook group, I'll put a link to it below this comment. Please do request to join. I'm the only admin at the moment. I will be looking out for, I don't know if they're admins or mods or whatever, so if any of you guys do want to be admins or mods or help moderate it, let me know, because that would probably be helpful, because I've set it up through my fan page as well. Facebook gives you, for fan pages, you have a different app on your phone called Creator, and for some reason that just doesn't notify you stuff. So I noticed when I set up the group, I sort of left it for a day, and then, or later that night, I think I checked the Creator app and noticed that there were like 20 you know, group join requests in there, that I had to go through and approve, and I had no way of knowing that they were there other than manually checking it myself, and I'm not great at picking up that app because it doesn't beep, and I assume people don't want anything, so I don't check it that often. So yeah, so I will probably be looking out for anyone who wants to be a mod. As far as I'm aware, all that's going to need is someone to approve requests as they come in. As far as I'm concerned, the rules are, so long as you're not a Russian hacker or some sort of weird bot, then I don't care. Anyone can join, it's free for all. And the only other thing then, so approve all the requests, and then if you see someone just relentlessly spamming, you know, I've sort of put in a rule in the group along the lines of no spamming, I've got no problem with people chucking a link to their track and going, what do you guys think, and maybe responding to the comments. But if you see someone just dropping links to their tracks, hey, check out my track, and then not responding to comments or anything like that, then as far as I'm concerned, that's spam. They can piss off. You know, and we all know hundreds of people will be trying to do that because that's what they do. So yeah, I'll have none of that, thanks. Yeah, I think that is it for this week. So like I say, I'll put the link below and please do click it. For anyone who has made it this far into the video, well done to you. Please do like, comment, subscribe, you know, get involved with these things because I do like getting the questions. Also, if you can click the little bell thing below or next to the subscribe button, then you'll get notified as soon as they come out on every Friday. And I do plan on doing some more videos as well, so maybe I'll do that Bitwig modular thing. And if you have made it this far into the video, then you definitely deserve a medal because we're, what, 40 minutes or something. And to prove that you've made it this far in, I am looking at a smart plug, so comment the word smart. I'll see you next week. Cheers.